Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by NICE, Looker, and RedPoint Global. I'm Bob Fernikes, and I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Actionable Insights with Predictive Analytics for Marketers. Today we'll be talking about why your predictions can only be as good as your data, and how to fix imperfect data, how to structure customer data for optimum predictive power, zero-sum marketing, and how predictive analytics can fuel the always-on dynamic customer journey and power real-time adaptive marketing. Before we start, I just want to explain how you can be part of this broadcast and participate by asking questions. So if you have any questions for one of our presenters during this broadcast, just type them into the question box, hit submit, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentations in our Q&A section. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if for some reason we can't get to yours, don't worry, we'll follow up within a day or two with an email response. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentations, you can download a PDF on the resource icon on the console once the event is archived. So now to introduce our speakers today. We've got Matt Redding. He's the VP Customer Journey Solution at NICE. We've got Daniel Mintz, Chief Data Evangelist at Looker, and Patrick Tripp, VP of Product Strategy at RedPoint Global. If you want to review the speakers' bios, just click on the arrow under their photos, and you can read all about them. So now I'm going to pass the event over to Matt Redding. Again, he's the VP of Customer Journey Solutions at NICE. Welcome to the broadcast, Matt.
Thank you very much, Bob, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for your time today. So I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking about how we at NICE think about predictive analytics for marketing purposes, and particularly in terms of how we can use those predictions to personalize the customer's experience, which is becoming more and more important in this day and age. I'm going to start off just by talking about the imperatives of personalization, if you like. For customers today, they're interacting with organizations through an ever-expanding number of channels. Not only are they talking to you either over the phone or in person, they're interacting with your mobile applications, with your websites, with you through social media, through chat, etc. And customers' expectations are that you understand what's happening in that journey, that you understand what they're interested in and what their needs are. And in order to take all of that information and use it in order to provide a personalized experience for customers, there's a lot that needs to go into that, of course, to synthesize that data and understand it in order to predict what a customer's needs are and what they're most likely to be interested in to give them the most relevant offers possible. So I'm going to go through in this presentation a few different parts of what I call the personalization cycle. How do you actually go about organizing and structuring your data to provide a personalized experience to your customers? It starts with connection, so connecting all these different data points around what customers are doing and how they're interacting with you across different channels. Moves to analysis of that information, to then predicting what a customer's intent is based on that analysis. And then, most importantly, the last mile of operationalizing that insight. So actually using the output of those predictions to influence how you interact with customers in any touch point across different channels. Before I go into some of the details on how we do that, I'll talk a little bit about the sort of different dimensions of accurately personalizing for customers across different channels. And we'll touch on each of these as themes as we go through. First of all, we've got timeliness. How quickly can you synthesize this information to be able to influence the customer's experience? Then we've got touch point reach. Are you able to influence your customer's experience across just one channel or all of your different touch points, all of the ways in which you're communicating and trying to market to customers? And then finally, the level of analytical sophistication or the level of refinement of your personalization. Are you speaking to everyone in the same way? Are you using broad brush segments to speak to different parts of the audience in different ways? or are you truly talking to each individual in a one-on-one fashion? And obviously, the closer that we get to the center of this, the more at risk we are of not being able to provide a relevant, personalized experience. And so I'm going to talk about how we help to push the experience across these three different dimensions. So as I said earlier on, the first part of this process is connecting and organizing your information around the customer journey. That starts with collecting raw interaction data from your various touch points, from your call center, from your websites, from your mobile apps, from your social media. And then that needs to be connected and organized around the customer's point of view. There's no sense in having disparate and diverse databases of information without it truly representing what the customer's experience is. So what we do and what you need to do is to structure this information in a time-ordered fashion so that you can understand what the customer is experiencing from point A to B to C, and obviously the key events along that timeline. When are you presenting offers to customers? What are those offers? What was the initial response to those? And then what was the final outcome? Did they end up purchasing what we're trying to market to them or not, which may or may not happen in the immediate time frame. A big part of that connection is handling customer identity. More and more now you've got customers identifying themselves in different ways across different channels, whether that be phone numbers, cookies, device IDs, email addresses, social media handles, etc. You need to be able to resolve the customer's identity, ideally in real time, as those customer interactions are happening. So you need to be able to connect these different data sources around a customer's identity and also look at those profiles in different ways for different purposes. You might want to resolve this information around a customer, an actual individual. Sometimes you might be marketing to households, which means that you want to connect together information from a number of different individuals, or in the B2B case, for example, where you want to resolve information around a number of individuals at a business that you're trying to market to. Or indeed devices at the lower level of resolution. So you need flexibility to be able to understand the customer's identity in different ways based on the different use cases that you have. Once you have all of this information together and connected, then you need to be able to structure it and use it in order to make predictions. And the way that we do that is to organize data in this very simple sort of timeline-oriented fashion. So what you see on the screen here, all these different swim lanes and arrows are representing a number of different customer journeys. And obviously in reality, you'll have millions of these potentially. And what is represented here, each of these dots represents a different interaction, a different touch with that customer, which could be an inbound or outbound touch. And there'll be key events within those timelines that you want to resolve around for the purposes of prediction. So the red dots here represent a cross-sell opportunity, so an opportunity to market a cross-sell offer to a given individual. And then the gray dots here represent an actual product purchase. So the success event, if you like, that's coming out of that offer. What we need to be able to do and do very efficiently and organize the data structure to be able to do is to be able to very easily filter and align these customer journeys around that point of interest, the focal point at which we're trying to make a prediction. But to be able to understand very quickly what was the state of mind of the customer at the point that we have the opportunity to put an offer out to them? What was everything that they'd done in the lead up to that, in the previous minute, hour, day, week, year, that gives us the context of what that customer has been doing and what we can glean from that in order to give them the most relevant offer. And then see what happened afterwards. Did they go on to complete the purchase or not? So you need to structure this information in this way so that you can very quickly understand the causation and the causality behind these different interactions and use that to then build your predictive models. At NICE, we use a number of machine learning techniques to be able to expedite that process of learning what the predictive indicators are of customer response to different offers or customer actions. So we have an automated machine learning algorithm that uses reinforcement learning techniques, which is particularly optimized for understanding and predicting long-term goals. which allows us to take a menu of different offers that we can put out to a customer, to set a goal that we're trying to drive. That could just be getting as many people to buy something as possible, or it could be a more complex goal that is related to a number of actions that could happen over time. And of course, taking all of the data that we have around a customer to observe the effect of the offers that we're putting out there, to learn all of the predictors of what that action is, and to then apply that learning in a constant manner and automatically update those models to be able to predict what the best outcomes are. Once you have that prediction, so a set of predictive models that give you a set of scores and likely outcomes for different cross-sell offers that you can put out to customers, the next question is, how do you actually operationalize that? So what you need is a decision engine, something that can take the question of what should I offer to this customer, either in an inbound or outbound channel, so whether a customer is coming to you and you have an opportunity to put an offer in front of them when they log into the website, for example, or if you're sending outbound campaigns such as emails or direct mails, you'll have a set of different things that you could put in front of this customer. What we have here is a set of different offers, and you need a number of aspects of this decision engine to be able to determine what you should present to them. The first thing in any sort of properly measured marketing that you need is a control group mechanism. So if you're going to be personalizing your customer journeys, you need to understand what's happening for when you're personalizing those journeys and what is the success of that personalization versus what will be happening if you weren't personalizing, so that you can measure that delta. And so that as well you can bake off different algorithms and different personalization approaches against each other and continue to optimize and refine those techniques as you proceed. Within the decision engine then, you're going to want a lot of different ways to make decisions. I talked a little bit about the automated machine learning that we employ, where we're automatically observing the results of the offers that we're putting out there and interpreting those to refine our future decisions. But you also want things like business rules. You want to be able to say, for customers who are in this geography or this segment or who have purchased this product before, I do or don't want to offer a particular offer to them. So you need that overlay of business rules and additional predictions to be able to make those decisions. And then, as a result of that, you get the final offer that should be presented to the customer. And this needs to be something that can execute extremely efficiently, in real time wherever possible, especially for scenarios like digital engagement where you're trying to personalize a customer's experience on the website. You need to take into account absolutely everything that you know about a customer at that point in time and everything that they're doing in real time within that session to be able to give them the best offer. So to close out for a couple of minutes, I just want to talk through a couple of real-world examples and to give you an idea of how this type of thing can be put into practice in a couple of different verticals. The first one I'll talk about that we're working with is a U.S. provider of hosted banking solutions to financial institutions in the U.S., serving about 10 million end customers. And here the problem is essentially of what is the best cross-sell offer to different customers based on what we understand about them, based on what we understand about their behaviors and what they're interested in terms of their website activity, their mobile activity, their financial transactions, and their demographics, to understand what the best upsell and cross-sell offerings are across the traditional retail banking set of products, credit cards, savings, mortgages, mobile banking, etc. They've deployed this type of capability across a number of different channels, across their websites, their mobile apps, their email marketing, and they have seen tremendous impact from this capability. So they're delivering 75 million optimized decisions per month. They're running about 6,000 campaigns in parallel and have seen over 20% lift in conversion rates from those optimized campaigns against the kind of control groups that I mentioned earlier on. The second example I'll give you is in the travel and hospitality world. This is a company with about 150 million customers on record, and it's catering to a very diverse customer base with diverse offerings from the more budget to the more high end. And so the problem is one of understanding what a customer's journey can tell us about the journey that customer has been on to give them the most appropriate offers. So we have about 10 different touchpoint channels, 10 different cross-channel data feeds that are helping us to create a single understanding of each customer's journey, with then dynamic models that predict the best offers, the best holiday options, vacation options for them to proceed at all phases of their vacation planning cycle, and then deliver those recommendations across the digital channels and the call center. So just to close out, just a few key takeaways, or just to reiterate what I talked about at the beginning. These are the key aspects that you need to think about as you're embarking upon or as you're refining your personalized marketing strategies and looking at using predictions for marketing. How can you connect all of your disparate customer interactions across these different channels to understand the customer's journey and the customer's experience? Understand those interactions, understand what they're telling you about the customer journey and where would be best to personalize those interactions. Use predictive techniques and automated machine learning to then predict what those outcomes are, and then operationalize that intelligence. Bring that to your touch points and make that gap between analysis and influencing the customer's experience as small as it possibly can be. With that, I will pass over to Bob. Thank you very much for your time and look forward to the Q&A later.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Great presentation. Just want to remind everybody on the call today that if you do have a question, just type it in. We'll hit submit, and we're going to do something a little bit different today for everybody that does submit a question. We'll pick a winner at the end of the broadcast and announce it live, and the prize is an Echo Dot. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Daniel Mintz again. He's the Chief Data Evangelist at Looker. Welcome to the broadcast, Daniel.
Thanks, Bob. So I'm going to talk, sort of high level about predictive marketing analytics and, why it can be so valuable, and also some pitfalls, some places where it can go wrong. I'll touch a little bit about sort of how we approach this at Looker and how we see our customers working with it. But, I really want folks to walk away with a clear understanding of sort of how they could apply, these techniques to their own workflows and their own world, and also what they need to be careful of as they're doing that. So, I think the first question, and I think Matt hit this nicely, but, why are we even bothering to predict, right? Like, why is this something that has become so prevalent, particularly in the marketing world when using marketing data? And I think, there are a number of different reasons that prediction is a powerful tool when we're trying to do marketing. So, one is obviously, as always, to save money, right? The classic marketer's dilemma of, I know that half of my ads don't do anything. The problem is I just don't know which half. This is part of why we predict, is to predict who's going to be responsive to particular ads or particular offers, and so save the money that we would have spent making the wrong offer or showing the wrong ad. So, that's a huge part of this is always the sort of economic case. But there are other reasons to bring prediction into the sort of marketing workflow as well. So, another one is all about sort of expanding universes of targets, right? If we have a small group of people who we know a lot about, maybe there are customers or there are people that we've bought information about or that we've had high-touch interactions with, that's great. But taking that information and extrapolating from what we know about them to a larger universe of sort of look-alike targets, people who share key characteristics with them, who we can predict might be as responsive to our offers as our smaller universe, that's a really powerful tool to expand the reach of our marketing. A third reason is all about relevance, right? The ability to sort of target the right message to the right person is, as Matt really touched on, is all about, keeping things as relevant both in sort of the time dimension and the content dimension and the sort of individual dimension, to the people who we're talking to as possible. If you're sort of broadcasting the same old message all the way, across your universe to everybody, and it never changes, not only is that unlikely to sort of work at first, but it's only going to get worse over time, because the people who were going to respond to it will have responded, and everyone else will sort of fall off. So figuring out how we can predict in a way that keeps us relevant to where people are at in their buying journey is really a critical function of prediction. So that's great. We can predict for those reasons and probably a lot of others, but unfortunately this is hard, right? This is not something that just sort of automatically happens. It's something that is hard to do well. And so if you have been working on this and have been struggling or not seeing the benefits that you thought you might, don't freak out. You are definitely not alone. There is no sort of one-size-fits-all solution, and it takes investment. Now, I think most people who've seen the success would tell you that the investment is worth it, that the return on investment is there, but it is not something where you flip a switch and automatically it starts working. And so, as often happens with things that are valuable but are hard, part of what happens is people come in and they offer magic. They say, I have this magic trick. Don't ask me too much about what's going on behind the scenes, but it will just make everything better, and it will make just the right predictions for your marketing, and it'll make everything great. And I certainly don't want to diminish the sort of value that people who specialize in this kind of work can bring, because the value they can bring is really enormous. And specifically when you work with a specialist, when you work with a vendor or someone who specializes in sort of marketing analytics and marketing predictive analytics, first of all, they bring subject matter expertise, which is really valuable in this space. The sort of understanding of why something is the way it is and what is likely to work can really save you time and money in not focusing on the wrong things. They often also bring expertise in sort of dealing with the particular data sources that marketers are using every day, right? So, whether you're using Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, whether you're using, a marketing automation tool like HubSpot or Marketo, pulling all that data together, ingesting it, preparing it, that is a huge part of the lift that goes into doing predictive analytics. And it really actually is where, Looker focuses. I'm not going to talk too much about Looker, but, our key focus is not on the specific solution of marketing analytics, but really much more around how do you get your data ready and available so that people can do these kinds of much more advanced workflows. And then, they often also bring proprietary algorithms, right? Tools that they have tuned and that are custom built to do this the prediction work. And, that may not be the sort of expertise that you have in-house, and that's fine. Lots of places don't have a data science team that can tackle that, and that's okay, right? That's why there are consultants and vendors. And so, I think working with an outside authority can sort of give you a lot of benefit, but, as with any magic trick, you do want to sort of trust but verify, right? And I think this is really critical when you're approaching this, and Matt called this out right up front. You need to have a control group. You need to understand what would have happened had you not, done prediction. And simply, looking at, well, things used to be like this, and then we made these changes, and now they're like this, so they're better. That doesn't cut it. I cannot, sort of advocate strongly enough for using a real good randomized controlled trial to make sure that you are isolating the impact of the prediction that you're doing. Because, something could change about the environment or the season or the day of the week or lots of other things that could impact your results. And so, a good control group and test group is really the only way to really understand whether what you've been promised is materializing in the results that you're seeing. So, that's one caution, is sort of trust but verify. And I think another one that is really critical here is that in the quest to sort of tune and sort of improve the modeling that you're doing and the prediction that you're doing, you can fall into a trap where you're sort of optimizing for a local maximum rather than a global maximum. And for those of you who have forgotten all of your 10th grade math, what I mean by that is just, you may see the hill because, well, you're on the slope of the hill and you go, we're just going to keep going up this hill and that's great. We're going to keep getting better and higher. But because you're looking up that hill, you may completely miss that there's a mountain next door that you could climb instead, right? And so I think with these tools that really let you focus on sort of optimization and incremental improvement, it's really important to still be thinking big about, yeah, we can marginally improve this offer by, changing the wording of it, but is this even the right offer, right? Completely the wrong offer. And by changing that, we would have a much bigger impact on our overall results. So challenges to be thinking about the hill versus the mountain and make sure that you're not losing sight of the global maximum of the sort of best that you possibly could do because you're working on optimizing the thing that's right in front of you. And, as I said, this is hard, and a big reason that it's hard is because marketing data is particularly tricky, right? If you are looking at, data that's pretty far down a sales funnel where somebody has logged into your website or they've had a contact with one of your representatives, you have a much clearer and fuller data set about that person and their intent and where they're at. If instead you're looking at just, information about a website visitor, your ability to predict is really limited because you don't know that much about them, right? And so, it's important to remember that marketing data is often quite dirty. One of the sort of core problems with it is that it's just, coming from all different devices in all different places. You're inferring things like, oh, well, if this IP address, is this, then I guess probably they're in this city or this state, but maybe they're, not. Maybe they're using a device that's connecting through a VPN or something. And so, there's a lot of dirtiness inside that marketing data. And so you need to be cognizant of that and particularly cognizant of where that dirt lies and sort of what you've cleaned up and what you haven't. As we've talked about, marketing data is omni-channel, and connecting those channels is getting better, but is really hard. Connecting the behavior of somebody on your website with their behavior in your app, with their behavior in your store is really, really hard. And so we shouldn't minimize that or pretend that there are magic solutions. We should just be cognizant of how good we are currently at sort of dealing with that and not sort of overestimate our ability to sort of get past those difficulties. Another problem is that marketing data is often really incomplete. You may have a lot of information about the device that someone was on and tons of information about their activity on your website, but not know who they were, right? And a woman or a man, how old are they? You can guess, you can buy commercial sources, and you can do lots of sort of interesting things, but as anybody who's actually looked up their own record in one of these data providers will tell you, some of it is on point and some of it is often way, way off. So, that it's important to sort of extrapolate that personal experience to the quality of the data overall. And then finally, it's often just hard to unify, right? And this goes to the sort of omni-channel piece, but most web tracking is still based on cookies, and cookies expire, they get cleared, people change browsers, people change devices. And so, bringing that back all together to get a sort of clear picture of who the person is rather than who the device or the browser is really hard and can be limiting because we can miss the fact that actually retargeting them to buy that thing, but they actually already bought that thing. And so, so being cognizant of these things is really important as you're building out much more sort of advanced algorithmic approaches to dealing with this data because, all of these problems don't magically go away when you start doing more sophisticated analyses. Now, the tools that we use are certainly improving. We are getting better at unifying this data. We are getting better at omni-channel. We are getting better at sort of completing the picture. but they're still, not perfect. And I think the core message that I give you is that the imperfections matter, because as you're getting further and further away from the raw data, as you're letting the sort of algorithm that you've proven out take over, where those imperfections were in the data initially, those don't go away, and they impact the results that you're seeing. And so that's part of why it's so important to sort of trust but verify. It's why it's so important, and why, at Looker we're so sort of so focused on, creating a sort of audit trail and, version control and things like that, so that you can actually see why the data is the way it is. And when you have a question, the answer isn't, well, I'm not really sure, it's kind of a black box. The answer is, I don't know, let's go look and see how the data got to be this way. So, I think that's a really critical part of approaching this whole field, because, it's easy to think, well, the output of my model is a lot better than the input, and in some ways it is, but in some ways it never can be, right? There's that expression in computer science, garbage in, garbage out, and that doesn't go away, right? So as you're sort of looking at the immense promise that these algorithms and these approaches can bring to your marketing, by all means dive in. It's easier than ever to try this stuff out. It's easier than ever to find people who can help you, and help you get value. But don't throw caution to the wind. Stay aware of where those imperfections are, why they're there. Stay critical as a sort of critical thinker, a skeptical thinker, and trust but verify. And I think if you do all that, you really will get all of the value without falling into any of those pitfalls. So, if you want to learn more, we've got a case study listed here. You can also just Google Yieldify and Looker to hear how Yieldify is using Looker and some other tools to increase customer ROI. If you want to hear more about Looker, you can do that at these links. Thanks so much, and I will hand it back to Bob.
Hey, thanks so much, Daniel. Just want to remind everybody that some people had asked whether or not the webcast will be archived, and yes, it will. Everybody will receive a email tomorrow. Also, if you'd like to contact the speakers, they have information on their slides, but we'll also follow up. And like I said, we're going to try something a little bit different, so anybody that wants to ask one of our presenters a question, just type it in, ask, and we'll get to it in the Q&A section. And we'll also give away an Echo Dot just to make it fun right on the broadcast towards the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Patrick Tripp. Again, he's the VP of Product Strategy at RedPoint Global. Welcome to the broadcast, Patrick.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks everybody for attending today. I'm excited to talk with you about how to deliver actionable analytics and insights for marketers. We all know the story of the empowered consumer, and Matt also talked about this earlier. They expect consistent and high-value digital experiences. They don't care if building these experiences is hard or requires a complex, multifunction approach from across your business. They want immediate value and will go elsewhere if you can't provide it. Personalization plays in here quite a bit. There are a number of methods marketers can leverage right away to start engaging with consumers with more personalized content, messages, and experiences. We should all be able to start with the Dear Name, insert emails, or insert that content automatically into other channels like web or direct mail. We should all be able to leverage customer profiles, demographics, and basic information to produce offers, content, and experiences. As we get more sophisticated, we need to look at transactional and purchase history, which often requires additional data sources like CRM or commerce systems, to then providing experiences that might take a combination of explicit and implicit cues to ensure we understand customer preferences, but aren't overtly reminding them that we know about them and respect their privacy, as in the case of somebody with food allergies or specific health issues. The more advanced personalization approach might be taking into account all the data, touch points, and cues to recommend a succession path of activity that will lead to more satisfaction and revenue. The challenge of delivering effective and contextual personalization all starts with the data, and Daniel also talked about this in his segment. You can have the best models and algorithms in the world, but if you have poor data quality, then you'll end up with poor results. This might include dirty data, missing values, incorrectly labeled categories, inconsistent formatting or erroneous values. This could be missing address or household information. To noisy data, conflicting data, misleading information, too much detail, or poor collection practices, which can lead to duplicates. Sparse data, not enough variables or data values, can lead to statistical significance problems. Inadequate data, incomplete data, bias sampling, or overcorrelation might not provide representative information. Many organizations create workarounds by placing incomplete or incorrect data into required fields in forms and applications, which can really dilute the effectiveness of any personalization and analytics strategy. If you're able to cleanse the data and get it in a reasonable fashion, there's a lot of value that can be created when engaging in a personalized real-time interaction with customers. There are 3 critical capabilities that organizations should consider when engaging in real-time customer dialogues. First and foremost is speed and agility. It's hard to provide deeply personal and contextual experiences without speed and agility. Providing contextual interactions means handling data and decisions at a speed and scale beyond traditional marketing and analytic systems. Business users need agile tools for real-time strategies that adapt to a new customer need and change based on context, continually adding value to the dynamic customer journey. I think of one of our customers, a global internet services provider, that's ensuring that experiences, pricing, and content is optimized in milliseconds for customers on their front of site, not minutes, hours, or days. Second is data-driven personalization. Effective personalization is largely about data. You need a very strong sense of the customer, which includes understanding online and offline behavior and customer preferences, automated targeting and segmentation to deliver unique, compelling, and relevant experiences. Another one of our customers, Xanterra Parks and Resorts, a house of brands, brings together multiple data sources across their brand portfolio to create a centralized customer data platform, which ensures their various brands from Mount Bicycle Tours to Windstar Cruises to Yosemite National Park are all aware of each other's offerings and content for each customer and prospect. This has also helped them generate a significant lift through segmentation of audiences based on various personas and lifestyles. Third is omni-channel optimization. Orchestrate customer interactions with self-learning models and predictive analytics that respond to current, relevant information to optimize results across all customer touchpoints and marketing channels. Think of our customer, Keurig Green Mountain, a traditional CPG brand that has really transformed the way they engage to a more direct-to-consumer model and leverage things like product recommendations on their website in combination with ABN testing optimization to ensure specific K-cups and flavor profiles are presented in a timely and effective manner to customers, whether they're anonymous or known on their site. We all know that traditional approaches to personalization through manual segmentation don't scale. How many hours and resources would it take to get a segment of 1,000, 100, or even 1? The modern customer has shed the generalizations of the past, and as we've mentioned before, customers now expect individualized experiences that are tailored to their specific interaction history, behaviors, and preferences. There's got to be a better way. I call this zero-segment marketing. This is an approach to evaluating all customers at all times, leveraging analytics. Machine learning plays in here as well to ensure the right content, context, cadence, and personalization is always applied, no matter what state or touch point the customer's in. Zero-segment marketing is a process of always testing, learning, and adapting based on customer feedback and preferences. Zero-segment marketing can allow marketers to leverage a combination of tactics to ensure personalization is delivered in context and at scale. So first we can think about business rules. Marketers can determine the logic of who gets what, when, and how with a set of forms and queries that can always be updated, but they must be maintained manually. To machine learning, deep personalization that can happen at scale by letting the system determine the cadence, offer, content, structure, and offerings based on each piece of feedback. Marketers must look to embrace machine learning to optimize and scale their personalization efforts. Marketers can definitely leverage a combination of these tactics. For example, you might have a series of models or A/B tests running, then a set of business rules to help arbitrate across models and approaches. In this method, you can make tweaks and adjustments to the approach, taking away some of the black box nature of what traditional or advanced analytical modeling provides. And the optimization of the customer journey is based on all customer information and preferences, and that's really the holy grail of personalization. Here you'll see a capability we call path to purchase optimization, which really allows marketers to determine the optimal path for each consumer based on their changing needs, experiences, and interests. As data, context, and information changes, the modeling changes to recommend a new path, all based on propensity scoring and analytics. So on the left-hand side, you see the customer profile and their information, their PII, their history, and then applying a predictive model might help not only determine the right offer and personalization, but also the actual right sequence of offers and content in the customer journey. So here are a few practical tips to leveraging analytics and real-time insights to better progress your business. First, get your house in order. Bring data in from any source needed. After the data is merged and cleansed, load it to a marketing database where you can access it for targeting and personalization. Use this data to better understand customers. Common tactics might include data integration, cleansing, and building out a single customer view. So think about technologies there as customer data platforms, data quality tools, and data integration tools. Second, walk. Start with low-hanging fruit opportunities to improve dynamic outbound communications, using available data from social data, clickstream data, anonymous browsing, point of sale, loyalty, and CRM to execute personalized outbound campaigns. Incorporate trigger marketing tactics to layer implicit and explicit data into customer engagement. Consider technologies like multi-channel or cross-channel campaign management, email service providers, and even BI and analytics tools. Third, progress real-time tactics from single-channel to multi-channel and layer in optimization. Try real-time inbound offers and experiences that engage customers on the web, call center, or in-store. Trigger messaging and remarketing through email, SMS, or mobile app to tie in real-time outbound communications. And run. Look for ways to optimize inbound and outbound communications and start shaping the ideal customer journey. Focus on a true orchestrated omni-channel journey, leveraging next best action, next best channel, and a consistent message across any channel. Take advantage of machine learning tactics like automated recommendations, propensity to buy models, or customer scorecards. So in this real category, you should think about advanced analytics, machine learning, ABN testing, and multivariate testing, and things like collaborative filtering and product recommendation engines. In order to deliver on analytics and insights, RedPoint is enabling organizations to optimize customer engagement and close the experience gap by providing them with a deep understanding of their customers and the ability to activate that understanding in the right cadence, the right moment, the right situation, delivered to the right device, channel, or engagement interface. We call this approach our Customer Engagement Hub, which provides three key capabilities. First, connected data. The ability to create a single customer view that is precise, always on, and always accessible across the enterprise. Secondly, inline analytics. That generates the next best action based on data and advanced analytics, and operationalizing predictive models, segmentation models, optimization, engagement flows, so you can hyper-personalize messages, offers, and actions that make the customer feel they're a segment of one. And third, intelligent orchestration across the last mile to the customer, with the ability to deliver a seamless experience for consumers across all enterprise touchpoints in real time. At RedPoint, we believe in the philosophy of an open garden. In simple terms, an open garden approach to marketing technology is designed to help marketers retain their legacy solutions while also counteracting entrenched data silos. This is in direct contrast to the traditional approach to enterprise software, often called walled gardens, that lack business users in a predefined state of technologies and pre-built data models. So really an open ecosystem, an open garden allows organizations to maximize their investments in their existing technology and all the sweat equity they may have spent over the years, bringing in different channel, database, touchpoint experiences, and really optimizing those and allowing that to be controlled through sort of a single point of operational control. If we want to learn a little bit more about RedPoint Global, you can go to redpointglobal.com and feel free to contact me as well. But thank you for your time, and now I'll hand the baton back to Bob, and we can answer some questions.
Hey, great. Thanks, Patrick. Excellent presentation. But before I let you go, I just want to ask you a follow-up questions. Can you give us some common use cases that RedPoint can control around advanced analytics and machine learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on some of that briefly in the segment, but first and foremost, you can think about taking advantage of ABN testing and multivariate testing on websites, collaborative filtering or product recommendations, as well as anonymous and known web targeting. That can certainly be business rules-oriented or machine learning-oriented. For in-store experiences, you might think of point-of-sale systems and Internet of Things devices were actually plugged into IoT and a few different appliances in retail organizations. More traditionally, it could be offline analytics from predictive models and descriptive analytics. And a more advanced approach, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is really optimizing the customer journey. So going beyond the content scoring and the personalization of content to the actual sequence of channels and touch points, applying machine learning to redecision that specific path to purchase or path to conversion based on the goals that you set. So those are just a few examples across web optimization, in-store, offline, as well as customer journey.
Great, great. Hey, I'm going to circle back to actually Daniel. The question is, where do you see some of the biggest game changers in terms of dealing with incomplete marketing data?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think, I think one place that's been quite interesting is just the rise of mobile devices, the sort of multi-device world that we live in now. And I think, the tools that the sort of big players that can connect, what people are doing on multiple devices because they have logins, Facebook and Google obviously being the biggest ones, they bring a ton to the table in terms of your ability to do that targeting there. Obviously that it needs to be then tied back to what you're doing sort of first party, and tagging and making sure that people, that you're sort of taking full advantage of that ability to better tie people to their actions across devices. But, I do think that for the initial period when we had moved into a sort of fully multi-device world, we were all kind of blind. And I think that is starting to change a bunch now. And so it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop. But I think it offers great opportunities.
Okay, great. Matt, don't want to leave you out of this. How do you recommend that companies embark on predictive analytics strategy for marketing? What would be the best way to get started?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I think the most important advice I can give there is to not try to boil the ocean immediately, and not try to personalize or predict absolutely every outcome that you're looking at. The best strategy is really to focus on a specific set of campaigns, a specific set of products, a specific set of customers, to understand those first of all and make the problem more tractable before you then scale those approaches out to your broader customer base and your broader campaign base. So don't try to boil the ocean to begin with. Start with something that you can quite easily understand, where you have data that is relatively clean. We talked a lot earlier on about data cleanliness and ensuring that you've got information that's robust about your customers. So start with something that you understand pretty well today and prove out the improvements that you can drive through personalization and predictive marketing using concurrent control groups to then build the case for eventually boiling that ocean.
Okay, great. So basically start with some quick wins. I have a sort of a follow-up question here, and I'm going to throw it out to the group. The question is, do you have any effective methods? This is probably one of the biggest things that everybody runs into, but the question is, do you have any effective methods of conveying analytic findings from predictive models, especially where they contradict common ideas in the company? Great question.
That's a really fun question. I'll take a first stab at that. This is Matt. I think because predictive analytics can bring forth often extremely complex concepts, and as the question says, sometimes contradict what might be the received wisdom in the company. And blinding people with science and going through all the nitty-gritty of what comes out of these predictive models can not necessarily be that efficient with people who are less familiar with the techniques. One strategy I've used, which has been quite effective in the past, is to use try to get to an individual use case that illustrates what you're talking about. And when I say an individual use case, look for specific customers, specific customer journeys that illustrate the finding. Maybe two of them. Maybe one which illustrates a poor outcome and one which illustrates a good outcome. Because that really brings it home to people. If you can see, customer X, whatever their name is, they did this, this, and this, and look what the outcome was, and then customer B did that, that, and that, and this was the outcome from that. That can really help to bring it home for a broader audience, even though your actual analysis obviously would be on a much broader audience.
Yeah, this is Daniel. I would just jump in on that to say the very first thing that I do when I get an analytic finding or a prediction that goes against the received wisdom is I sort of audit it and I bring in other people who ideally have a lot of subject matter expertise, not the people who received the wisdom, but ideally the people who came up with the wisdom in the first place, to sort of gut check me, because sometimes the received wisdom was right, and the prediction is wrong because there was some problem with the data or some problem with the algorithm. So that's the very first thing I do. But if I am really sort of confident that the finding is robust, I think what Matt said is zeroing in, bringing it down to a sort of individual use case can make things a lot clearer rather than looking at the big picture. Zooming in can help. I think also presenting people with the finding, acknowledging that that it is against the sort of received wisdom, and then walking them through, to the extent that you can, walking them through how you got there, can help build confidence that you know what you're talking about, that you're not just sort of throwing everything into the algorithm, walking away and coming back a couple hours later and getting the answer, and you don't really understand what's going on. So showing them that you really do understand their world, and showing them maybe if you can isolate it where that received wisdom went wrong, can be really powerful.
Right. It seems like an area where you could damage your reputation if you went against perceived wisdom too often and didn't work out. I guess the risk. I have another question here. Okay, so here's probably a pretty common question. I've worked with large companies, but I'm currently with a startup. How much data should a company have prior to engaging with one of these tools in order to get real predictions and results? We have plenty of data, but we have limited number of users and transactions due to the time that we've been in business. Can you start achieving results fairly
I would make
early?
one comment on this. It's saying, traditional predictive models do require a significant amount of data to really have statistical significance to make actionable recommendations. So the more data, the better, of course. We're not advocating that you need to collect a massive amount of data before embarking on some of these efforts, at least on our side at RedPoint. We believe you can start learning immediately, whether that's applying machine learning to an ABN testing scenario, and that might be in a test mode as you kind of go alongside what's in production and use that as a way to evaluate before deploying. But we think it's certainly something you can sort of get started on right away, and with more of a self-learning model orientation, you're certainly, as every data point comes in, you're getting stronger with your predictions. So the more data, the better, but I think you could certainly get moving with a test kind of process.
Okay, that's Patrick from RedPoint, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Actually, a similar type of question, is, in your experience, how large does a control group need to be statistically relevant?
I mean, I can jump in since I'm the one who, this is Daniel, who sort of threw that out there. I mean, I think that is a question that statisticians, I don't want to get on the wrong side of any statisticians on the call, so I won't give a hard and fast answer. There are good tools to sort of help you calculate statistical power and all that stuff, and if you have someone who's a statistician or who just loves statistics, they will probably bend your ear talking about it, probably for longer than you want. See, now I've gone and got myself in trouble with statisticians anyway. But I mean, I think the trade-off is always, the sort of bigger your group, the more easily you're going to be able to pick up small differences. And that's the thing to keep in mind. So, even with a very small test group and a very small control group, if the test group performs twice as well as the control group, you're going to see that, and you're going to see it pretty easily. And so, what you lose when you've got smaller groups is just you lose the ability to pick up small differences, but it is still a valuable tool to keep that control group because it proves to you that what you're doing actually has an impact.
Great. I see we've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions to our three panelists. Matt, I'll jump back to you. What are some of the pitfalls using automated machine learning for marketing experience personalization? I know you touched on that.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I touched on that a little bit. I think going back to, I think it was Patrick who was, talking about ensuring that you verify what's coming out of a model like that. When you're using a machine to, drive decisions for you, to drive predictions, those machines can be extremely efficient. They can sometimes go off on tangents that they shouldn't do. So 2 things, I suppose. One is make sure you've got that control group. Make sure that you're validating that you are, in fact, getting better results using that kind of machine than not. And secondly, make sure that you are that what you're doing is interpretable, that the machine is not a black box, that you can look into it and understand what's driving it, what some of the predictive variables and indicators are that are being used by it, and validate those against the received wisdom, as we said earlier on. Does it make intuitive sense what the machine is learning? If not, it might have found something that is correct, but make sure that you can validate that.
Great. Daniel, have you seen any marketing analytics go wrong, or you got any good, quick stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite one is the one about the lake in Kansas. I talked about IP addresses and trying to map them to locations, and we do a reasonably good job of that. But there is a bucket of IP addresses that don't correspond with the geography, and a bunch of the providers decided that they would just assign them the center point of the United States, and that happens to be a lake in Kansas. And so for tools that don't take that into account, there is a big cluster of users who just love that lake in Kansas and live out there in the middle of nowhere. So that's one of those great places where you can go very, very wrong. It speaks very clearly to the value of understanding what your data actually is doing and where it came from.
Okay, great. And Patrick, we'll just follow up with you. I know that you mentioned some things during your presentation, but can you give us some ideas, some of the brands you guys have worked with and some of the challenges automating analytics and insights?
Yeah, sure. Alluded to a few of them, but a few others. Here at Green Mountain, for sure, on the front of site, they're doing a lot there around recommendations and testing. Xanterra Parks and Resorts, the travel and hospitality company in the U.S. Brands like WGBH, Public Television, Rite Aid, GuideWell Connect, which is a healthcare payer organization. Really, these organizations are doing a variety of things from regression, classification, product recommendations, clustering, a number of different things. So it's really an exciting time for us and various amount of use cases.
Great. Okay, so we're a little bit over the hour. Just wanted to, we did something fun today. We were just going to give away an Amazon Echo Dot, just completely at random. That will go to Kyle Connor. We have your information, but you can always type it in and just to double check, make sure that we've got your information where to send that. Also, would love to thank everyone that was on the presentation today and everybody that asked questions. Sorry we couldn't get to, I think we skipped one question, but we'll try to follow up by email within a day. I'd like to thank our speakers for today. Again, we've got Matt Redding, VP of Customer Journey Solutions at NICE, Daniel Mintz, Chief Data Evangelist at Looker, and Patrick Tripp, VP of Product Strategy at RedPoint Global. Even if you didn't win the Echo Dot today, don't worry. You'll enter into a drawing, and we'll pick that on May 31st. We'll let you know via email. For everybody that wanted to pass this presentation or this webcast over to a colleague, you can use the same URL or just wait till tomorrow. You'll receive a follow-up email, and once you get once you get the link, once you go to the archive, you'll also be able to download all the slides as well. And I think that's it. So that concludes our broadcast for today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's webcast. We appreciate your participation. You may now disconnect. Speakers, please stand by.